Hey guys, welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV. Welcome back to another weekly used gun review. Remember, in these videos, we take about 8 used firearms that have come through the door and give you a 3 to 4 minute review of each one to give you guys an idea of some different stuff that is out there on the market. Remember, the purpose of this video is strictly for entertainment and to be educational. Nothing in this video is for sale, to keep in accordance with YouTube's policies. Anyway, guys, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into it now. Alright, remember in these videos we start with most common, move through least common as the video progresses. Now, starting off with this is a Glock 19X. I've had these a couple times on these videos before. I think the last one was maybe episode 9, but anyway, we'll start off with another one here. To recap, 19X came out a couple years ago as a result of the military M17 handgun trials. Of course, as many people know, the SIG P320, now known as the M17, won that trials, and a lot of people attribute that to the price point of the contract. A lot of people argue that the Glock should have won. I'm not going to weigh in on that, but anyway, this was Glock's submission. The main thing, as the name of the trials would suggest, the modular handgun trials, is that the firearm had to meet a certain amount of modularity. The M17 met it by having the 3 different grip frames, and of course the trigger module could come out. Actually, the interchangeable back straps did meet the modularity requirement, so there was that. They did want it to be an FDE coyote tan color, which of course you're going to see other offerings from that trial program, most notably again the M17, as well as Beretta's M9A3, which actually did not even come into the trials. They submitted that, but the U.S. military said, hey, we're getting away from the Beretta concept altogether, going for something else. So the M9A3 is a result of that as well. Now, essentially what you have and why we have the name 19X is X is a crossover between a 19 and a 17. You have a 19 slide and a 17 frame, 17 round capacity as standard. This would come with 3 magazines, 2 17s, two 19s, which is this one, which is basically a 17 with an extension, and then 1 17 round mag. Price point on these new under normal conditions were about $599, $620, somewhere in there. Now they're elevated. I've seen this over $700. New used again is going to be in about the $600 price point. So other features, it did come standard with a 3-dot night sight configuration. If you don't like the color options, you do have the Glock Model 45, which is a similar concept from this, but meets more into line with the Generation 5 features, black with front slide serrations. No finger grooves, which is indicative of a Gen 5. This did have an extended stop here on the front of the grip, as well as a lanyard loop requirements, I guess, from the XM17 handgun trials. Reversible magazine release, ambidextrous slide stop, which again, of course, was indicative of the Generation 5 features. You have the Gen 5 barrel, NDLC, and this was actually done in-house NDLC coating. So really, really nice handguns. I've always liked the 19X. There's been rumors about these stopping in production, but I still see them come in from time to time, so I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, starting it off, Glock 19X. Okay, up next is a follow-on to a firearm that was in last week's video. Now, last week, you remember the Taurus M44. This one is a Taurus 608. Well, the M44 is a 44 Magnum large frame revolver. This one here is a 357, and the M44 came out in 1994, and the 357 variant of that was actually the 607. Now, Smith & Wesson, about that time in the early to mid-90s, came out with the 686 Plus, which was a 7-round capacity version of the standard model 686, which held 6 traditionally. Now, in 1997, Taurus would come out with this one, the 608, and the only difference is they added another round to the cylinder, giving it an 8-round capacity. So actually, this is one of the highest capacity 357s on the market. I know that there are others, including ones from Smith & Wesson, but it is a very large capacity 357 revolver. Now, of course, it would follow the lines of the M44 series, where you had the ports right up here above the barrel, and would give it the traditional look, or the iconic look of things you would see from like the Colt Python or the Colt Anaconda. Now, of course, I did have the tracker series. We talked about that before. The main difference is there's just a solid barrel and underlug with no ports up here on top of the barrel. Double single action revolver, frame safety lock, or the trigger safety lock here on the back. Now, the great thing about the Taurus revolvers and the 357 and the 44 series like this, especially as they came on board in the 90s, is there wasn't really an inexpensive option for a lot of people. Again, you had the Smith 686s, you have the Colt Pythons, you have the Colt Anacondas. Rossi, I am sure, had 357s out on the market. They were mainly known for their snubby 38 specials. But if you wanted, again, in the 90s, a 357 or a 44 Magnum at an affordable price, these were probably your best options. New, typically you're at about $450 to $500 on these under normal circumstances. Of course, prices are elevated about $100. Used, you could find one of these traditionally for about $300 to $400, which is a really good price for a full frame 357 and an 8-round cylinder or a 44 Magnum. So really, really cool revolvers. Always been a lot of buyers on these things. Now, something like this in the current market in its original box, there is a little bit of surface rust or something. Maybe it's just dried oil right there on the frame. But in this condition, you're looking at about $450 on the current market. Again, under normal circumstances, the same firearm might be about $350 to $400 used. So for the money, a really nice option. Fun for the range with an 8-round capacity, really viable for home defense. With the 6.5-inch barrel like you see here. Like I said, good range blinker, and of course in a 357 you can also shoot 38s and 38 plus P for less expensive target practice. Of course, right now all ammo is hard to get and pricey, but it's still going to be easier and less expensive on 38 special than it will be a 357 Magnum load. So anyway, really cool firearm. Happy to have this one in for this video. All right, up next is a very popular one. This is a Smith & Wesson model 5906 9mm double single action handgun. Now this, along with the 5903, were most popularly used by a lot of law enforcement departments around the United States. The 5903 was an alloy frame with a stainless steel slide. This is a stainless steel frame and slide. The 5904 was just like the 5903, but it was black. And the 5905 was just like the 5906, except it was carbon steel, not stainless steel. So this one here, the 5906, was the heaviest. So this one was manufactured between 1989 and 1999, the 5903 between 1990 and 1997. Of course, like I said, throughout the 90s, they had a lot of use with law enforcement departments. Then I'll come into the sort of supply and availability of these, which I'll talk about here in a second. This is a double single action, does have a decocker safety. Your options from the factory were a 10 or 15 round magazine. This is 15 being standard capacity. A fixed sight like this, 3-dot configuration, or a target sight. You would most commonly see these on the police variants. And then a single piece wraparound grip. Magazine release is here on the left-hand side of the firearm, and of course an all-metal construction makes this a very robust, smooth shooting, very accurate sidearm. Now, the interesting thing throughout the 90s is that was when military departments were starting to switch over to polymer frame handguns, most notably because of the introduction of the Glock firearm that came in 1988. So as Glock would start trying to get into law enforcement and to the law enforcement market here in the United States, a lot of them would convert over from firearms like this, and even some departments still issuing things like the Model 10, getting into the Glock handgun because they're a lot lighter, parts are cheaper and easier to replace, and the firearm contracts themselves were a lot more attractive than things like this from Smith & Wesson. Glock also had a program where you could trade in your old police sidearm like this and get a substantial amount of the price knocked off of the Glock handgun that the department would be going to, and then of course Glock would sell the old police sidearms on the secondary market. So kind of an interesting tidbit of information there. Now, when it comes to pricing and availability of these in the 5903s, you basically are going to get them from two sources. So of course Smith & Wesson did sell these to the consumer market, and typically you find those in the blue Smith & Wesson kind of retro looking cardboard Smith & Wesson boxes. If you get those in the box in really good condition, you typically find those around the $400 to $600 price point. Now, because these were used by a lot of police departments, you will find these as surplus police sidearms, which is what this is. They typically come in boxes like this from Century Arms or any other type of wholesaler that has bought these up in large quantity for resale. The 5903 and 5906s, for a long time, you could find them between about $300 and $350. This one, like for example, you can kind of see there's really bad scratching here on this grip, probably from getting in and out of a car, putting on a seatbelt, you know, I don't really know. So the previous owner put on this nice set of Hogue wraparound grips. Now you could get them in excellent condition like this. This one's in really, really good shape. Again, if you were lucky enough, whatever was shipped to you, you could get them for really low affordable prices, about the $300 price point. Because of that, the market on these, and again, that police surplus market's really dried up. Which, by the way, Century also got in a batch of these through a foreign country, probably, I don't know if Israel, or there was a country that used the 5903 as a police sidearm, because a bunch of those came in import marked recently. We actually had a bunch of those in here about 2 years ago. And again, we retailed them at about $300. Anyway, price point on these, in really good condition, anywhere from about $300 to $500 right now, the police surplus ones, depending on the condition, of course. So really, really cool sidearms. If you're looking for something at a good price point that is actually a really, really good shooter, home defense or anything like that, I definitely recommend taking a look at these. They're just really cool, nostalgic, they balance well, and these have been used in tons of different movies as well. TV shows, things like that. Just not only this, but the different variations of the Smith & Wesson steel frame family throughout the 90s. So anyway, cool historic piece from 90s history, and I definitely recommend picking one up if you see one again for that $300 to $500 price point. Okay, up next I have a standard model Springfield M1A. I've had these here on these videos in the past. I think I had a scout rifle on one of these about 3 or 4 months ago, but this is the full-length configuration. Standard profile rifle from Springfield Armory, not to be confused with Springfield Arsenal. So the story on this, and I'll quickly recap because I've been over this history before, is that of course it all starts with the military M14. Now the Arsenal would have been closed by McNamara in the late 60s as private production firms like Colt would take up military production, and of course that's how things are pretty much done today, especially, you know, all over the world in most modern countries. So we have the advent, of course, the adoption of the M14. It's used in Vietnam, replaced kind of early on by the M16 variants, the XM16E1s and things like that. Now after the war, of course, we get into Camp Perry, which had a lot of competition matches throughout the 70s and 80s. And one thing that people really wanted to use in the competitions was an M14 variant. Now the problem is the military M14 was select fire. It was fully automatic, so it was a machine gun and therefore would have to fall into the rules of the NFA. To get something a little bit easier, there were two gentlemen who were competitive shooters. It was Elmer Balance and Melvin Smith. They came up with a concept for a civilian semi-automatic only version of the M14. Now, they created a company out of Texas where they manufacture these, but very quickly thereafter sold it to a gentleman named Bob Reese, who is now the current owner of Springfield Armory out of Illinois, which we all know today. Now, they are still producing the M1A in this configuration. Some of the main differences between this and the military M14 was this was an investment cast receiver, and the early M14s, and I actually have one. I have an M14 versus something, M1 Garand, I think. I have an M14 versus M1 Garand video, where mine is an old 1980s M1A, which is actually made predominantly from surplus M14 parts. So if you got one of the older ones, they call that the golden era M1As. It's really as close as you can get to the M14. Now there are a couple manufacturers today like James River who do put out a really good reproduction M14 with a milled receiver and everything, but those are about, you know, $3,000 or so. Anyway, getting back into this, these have been produced, like I said, for many, many years, and of course you can still get them today as new manufacturer. Now they do make them in a variety of different configurations. Full-length versions like this with a 22-inch barrel, which is how the M14 was. You can get them in a walnut or polymer stock, which you see here, the polymer version. Walnut's going to add about $150 to the price tag. You can get them in a standard, loaded, or national match configuration, and you can get them in DMR, designated marksman setups as well. This, in its polymer stock in the standard configuration, is going to be your least expensive, which would retail new at about the $1,300 to $1,400 price point. Right now, I have not seen pricing on M1As really affected that much by what's going on. Most people are not buying stuff like this for like panic buying home defense rifles. So You should be able to find these used in and about the $1,000 to $1,100 price point, you know, give or take. New, again, $1,200, $1,300, $1,400. The walnut configuration standard should be about $1,500, $1,600. If you go loaded up to national match, you're up over $2,000. You could get them with the stainless steel barrel. Now, all the modern ones, the post-ban M1As, will not have a bayonet lug. Pre-ban M1As, like the old golden era, 1980s and early 90s M1As, will have a bayonet lug up here, like the standard military M14 would. Not that many people are going to mount bayonets, but there you go. So these come standard now from Springfield with a 10-round magazine. The military M14s were issued with a 20-round magazine, which this one has inserted here. The mags from Springfield are expensive. They're about $50 or $60. You can get surplus M14 mags and they will work, so not a problem there. But anyway, these are very nice rifles. They are a lot of fun. They make different aftermarket parts like scope mounts and stuff for them like that. So if you ever get a chance to find one of these on the new or used market, definitely worth taking a look at. Really, really cool rifles. All right, up next is another classic revolver. Sorry about the focus there. This one here is from Ruger, and it's another yellow box. You guys remember the GP100 from last week? This came in from the same seller. This one here is a Ruger Super Redhawk. This one here has a 7.5-inch barrel. They also made them in a 9.5-inch barrel and a 2.5-inch barrel, the 2.5 being the Alaskan. So the model would come out onto the market in 1987, and they are still manufactured today. This particular one is a second-year production, 1988. Just like the GP100 I had, actually, as I just mentioned, may have just mentioned, both of them came in from the same seller. This one here is a 44 Magnum. It features a 6-round capacity. It is a double single-action revolver. Has an adjustable rear sight and a front fixed post. Now this would also be offered in 454 Casull, 10mm, and 460 Ruger. Okay, so coming out into the market in 1988, or 1987, so in the late 80s, there were other 44 Magnums on the market, most notably from Smith & Wesson, that came in at a higher price point. These were less expensive, not by a whole lot. Now, brand new on today's dollars, you're looking at about the $600 to $800 range, depending on, you know, configuration you find it in, barrel length, and that's brand new. Used right now, these, you know, an original yellow box gun, and this one actually has a Weaver long eye relief scope with original unopened Ruger rings, something like this, in about the $700 to $800 price point. Now, of course, being the Ruger Super Redhawk, there of course is a standard Ruger Redhawk. The main difference is between the two is that this is more of a robust and beefed up frame. As you can see, there is sort of like a frame extension out here that the barrel threads into. The standard Ruger Redhawk does not. The barrel just threads right into the frame, kind of in a traditional look. Both swing out cylinders. This utilizes a lot of these standard parts of a Ruger GP100. So the trigger mechanics are the same, and a lot of the internal parts are the same. In fact, a lot of the parts will translate over from the GP100 and are interchangeable with the Ruger Super Redhawk. That is not true on the standard model Redhawk. It actually uses a completely different trigger design and internal system, which of course, again, those parts are not going to be interchangeable with this pattern or the GP100. So the Ruger Super Redhawk is more in line with other Ruger product offerings. The standard model Redhawk is more of a standalone option. Anyway, these are very popular amongst the hunting community, especially for people who are using pistols or revolvers for hunting purposes. And these are probably used most often as far as a 44 Magnum revolver for hunting purposes. It's kind of that nice mix between rugged, reliability, durable. You could take it deep in the woods with you. It could get rained on. You can drop it in the mud. It's not going to get hurt, and it's going to work. And it's not overly expensive. You're not taking out your nice collectible Smith & Wesson Model 29 with you or something like that. So always buyers on these things, really affordable price, really rugged, robust, just excellent revolvers. Definitely recommend taking a look if you see one at your dealer's used gun shelf. Okay, up next I have a series of 22 rifles that are formed off of or based off of a full-size military style, if I can use a term coined by the media, military style platform. So what I have here is a Colt M4 OPS or OPS carbine. Now this one here is actually made by Walther in Germany, and it's branded with Colt roll markings and Colt labels on the boxing and everything like that. Now the pricing on these things have been a little bit weird, especially because Colt announced about, I guess it's been about a year ago, that they were going to stop manufacture of AR-15s for the civilian market. Now even though this is not made by Colt, anything that's bearing the Colt branding has gone way up in pricing. Now the cool thing about things like this is it does give a cheaper, less expensive alternative for training where you're not burning up your 5.56 or 223. You can go out and shoot your 22 LR, which in times like this with ammo availability being what it is really a nice option. Now, the pricing on these back when they were available was about $400 to $450 new, but I'm seeing the pricing on these up to normally about $500 used. I even saw one that went on Gunbroker for $1,200, so I can't really explain that. But again, once Colt announced that they were stopping production for the civilian market, the pricing on stuff like this exploded. Tie that in with the limited availability of stuff in general. So there you are. Now, the cool thing about this one in particular, as opposed to the leader in the market, which I would say the leader in this field is this with the Wesson M&P 1522. That is a all polymer receiver. This is the 7075 aircraft grade aluminum, so the same balance, weight, heft, and feel of a traditional AR-15. Which again, so when you go out and you train with your 22 LR, you go back to your 5.56, everything translates right over to you for use on your standard M4 platform. So that's kind of why things like this have maintained in popularity. So now this concept is pretty popular, the 22 inside of a full traditional look. You have that on the 416, which I'm about to show you. You have that, there's a Humorex makes a variation of different things that are like this, both in like BB guns and in 22s. So it's kind of like the, I always say it's like the airsoft market. It's where you take manufacturers of airsoft guns, you put the roll markings and the sort of recreation of actual cool, nostalgic military small arms, and you can kind of get the look and the feel. Here, it's easy to get M4s, but you find that in like MP5 clones, like I said, 416s, the Beretta ARX, things like that, where you can actually get the feel of it and a subcaliber package. So things like this are very popular. Again, this for training and for the ability to have a really nice, cool Colt M4 platform, which traditionally should have been about for $300. Now a lot more, but in a nice, affordable package. So really cool to get stuff like this in. And as I just showed you in that one, here is yet another one along the same vein. This is an HK416D, also made by Walther. Of course, not made by HK, but branded and marketed. Putting this behind me, with license row markings and all that from HK. So everybody knows the famous 416. It's a very, very expensive, it'll run you about maybe $5,000 or $6,000, 5.56 rifle from HK. Here again is another option of getting the traditional 416 look in a 22 LR package. Now, pricing on these, again, was not very expensive. $300 to $400 is what they would retail for new. Again, they have not been that easy to find lately. On the used market, I'm seeing these go between about $400 and $500. So there you go. Again, you can use this as a training implement if you have a full-size 416, because everything will translate over. It's all the controls are in the same place. The feel, the look, and the balance is very similar. So just another really cool option. Not going to go into too much detail on these. I'm actually going to show you a few, and I'll show you a bonus. Usually we do 8 guns. I'll do 9 this week because I got a couple more that sort of follow the same sort of feel. So there is the HK416D in 22 LR made by Walther. Here's another one along that same vein. This is an Anschütz. We'll have to look at the markings, see who made these. Modern sporting rifle. It's an Anschütz MSR RX22. Made in Germany, it says made in Germany for Anschütz, or Anschütz, however you want to pronounce it. But what you can clearly see here is this is a 22 LR version of a SCAR, if you will. Sort of follows the same lines. Very SCAR-esque stock. Magazines here. So they made a pistol variation of this as well. There you go. 22 LR, really big muzzle brake, long barrel there. And all of these, as you guys probably know or can tell, were all brought in by the same guy. So he likes to collect 22s, especially 22s sort of modeled after, again, military rifles. The SCAR, the 416, the M4. So here's another one. These, Again, on the used market right now, selling for about $500. Stuff like this, as you can tell, that a lot of these are coming in from Germany. GSG is another one that makes a lot of stuff like this. But again, not very easy to find that stuff right now. I don't know if they're just not coming in, or like everything else, they're difficult to find. But again, when these things were new on the market, $300 to $400 new, but we're seeing them used $500 plus right now. So there is another 22 version of a SCAR, if you will. And yet another, this is a Beretta trademarks. It's like the AR, I believe they call it the ARX, ARX 100 if I'm not mistaken, but this is the ARX 160. Again, in 22 LR, an exact copy of their traditional ARX battle rifle. This one is actually made by Umarex in Germany. So again, not made by Beretta, but it is licensed trademark and of course follows the exact same design features. Let me move this out of the way. Or actually, I'll stick the magazine in. So really cool, of course, the Beretta, the ARX variation in 5.56 is currently being used as the standard issue military rifle from Italy, changing out from the AR, not the AR-70, that was the commercial, I think the AR-80, if I'm not mistaken. I need to brush up on that. Fully pretty much polymer design, so this actually looks and feels like the standard 5.56 counterpart. They could do left or right-hand ejects, so I guess that would be, actually this would be set up for the same way. You have shell deflectors on either side. Mostly polymer construction, which is true of the original as well, when people like to say it looks like a pregnant tuna fish, which it kind of does. So again, this kind of shows you just the philosophy of 22 LR versions of the full-size rifle, which actually look and feel and translate exactly over. So if you had the standard Beretta ARX and you wanted to train on something less expensive, you could pick up something like this. Again, $300 to $400 new is what they should go for, but used, we're seeing them at, again, about the $500 price point. But still a less expensive way to train, and then when you want to move back over to your traditional 5.56 platform, you can do that, and all of your training, controls, handling, manipulation will translate right over for you. So just kind of a cool series. It's kind of, like I said, the airsoft world of 22s, the Umarex, and different German-based manufacturers pumping these things out. So you can kind of get the look and the feel. Even if you don't have an ARX or a 416 or an M4, or a SCAR, you can get the 22 version and have the look and feel with, spending a fraction of the cost. So very, very cool options. Definitely worth taking a look. I haven't had any of these. I mean, I've had one of the Walther made Colts and actually one of the Walther made 416s, but I've never had one of these in here. I've never had one of the Anschütz rifles either. So really, really cool. Glad to get this kind of stuff in. And there you go. So there's a nine firearms for you. The last 4 kind of all fit into the same camp though. So we'll leave you guys off with that. Well, that is all the time I have for you today on this. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. If you enjoyed, please let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Also, we do upload these videos every single week, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and bell notification button so you are aware when new ones are uploaded. If you have any questions, as always, leave those down below in the comment section. I will leave you guys off there. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV. I will see you next time.